In Finland, we want to demonstrate that lobbying can be an important instrument in a democracy. We are namely about to launch a transparency register, which will make lobbying more open to all stakeholders. My name is Päivi Shivola. I'm chair for the Council of Ethics for Communications in Finland, and with me is Tuomo Yli-Huttula. Welcome, Tuomo.
Thank you.
Tuomo knows everything there is to know about Transparency Register because he is a chair for the lobbying network in Finland. Plus, he was a member of the working group which prepared the Transparency Register at the Ministry for Justice. And he works as a director for communications and public relations at Finance Finland. So, together we would like to share with you why in our vocabulary lobbying is not a dirty word. After all, a well-functioning democracy pretty much depends on how well the decision makers are informed on the various issues they are dealing with. They must understand how this or that regulation would affect the stakeholders. The stakeholders, again, have a need to clarify the impact of legislation to their lives, businesses, and values they hold dear. So, dialogue is clearly needed, and this dialogue often takes the form of lobbying. So what's the problem? The stigma of lobbying has its roots in secrecy. Secrecy creates fruitful ground for suspicions of corruption and undue influence. The Finnish way to enhance openness and thus reinforce public confidence is establishing a transparency register. The proposal was recently sent out for comments and there were many interesting views. So there may still be changes before the legislation has been decided on in the Parliament. However, we do know the basic elements of the legislation. In a nutshell, the new legislation would mean that all organizations and individuals engaged in lobbying will have to register their activities. Tuomo Yli-Huttula, you're a communications professional yourself and a lobbyist, and you were also a member of this preparatory working group. So how would you describe the process?
The starting point was quite easy because all stakeholders understood the need for transparency. It also became clear that a register would be a good way to enhance openness. Even the lobbyists themselves supported the idea.
The preparation was to be done in consultation with the civil society. Tuomo, how did this principle show in the preparations?
Everything was extremely open. All the documents were and still are available on the Minister of Justice website. There was a lot of research and the results were published in open webinars.
A register may sound simple, but is in fact quite complicated, particularly when it comes to implementation. One of the most challenging questions is the scope. Should it cover whole of the state administration or only the parliament and the ministries? Here the views varied a lot. Tuomo, in your opinion, what would be the wisest alternative?
The scope of implementation is indeed still open. At this point, it is wise to start off with a modest model, focusing only on the Parliament and the ministers. This proposal for scope received the widest support also during the now closed period for comments. The scope can later be extended to include government agencies once there is enough experience of how the registers works.
Here I might add that the two of us agree to disagree. The Council of Ethics for Communications voted for the wider scope. However, this is more about the difference in timing and choreography than a difference in fundamental issues. Not all organizations have big resources. A lot has been said about the workload, particularly when it comes to small NGOs, for instance. How do you see the situation?
We had to navigate between two principles: how to ensure enough information for it to be useful, and how to limit the workload. I think there are balanced quite well in the proposal.
This is how it works. The lobbyists are obliged to register twice a year who they have targeted and on what issue. They do not have to include detailed descriptions or attached documents. Furthermore, sporadic contacts do not have to be included. The approach has to be more systematic. Then the information contained in the transparency register would be published in a public information network in a service maintained by the National Audit Office of Finland. The information would be stored in the public transparency register for 10 years, after which it would be archived permanently for research purposes. Obtaining information from the register would be free of charge. It's not always clear what activities should be defined as lobbying. For instance, a public affairs agency may consult a company in its lobbying efforts without ever being present in an actual meeting. The consulting may mean screening the key decision makers or formulating core messages or so on. These activities should also be registered. Implementing transparency register is going to be demanding, to say the least. Several comments have been made on how to monitor the system and analyze how it should be developed. There's going to be a council to support the implementation. In the council, there will be representatives of various stakeholders. Tuomo, what are your expectations for this council?
The advisory board would also prepare recommendation, a good interest representation practice, launch an initiative for the development of the activists, and act as an official cooperation body for stakeholders associated with the Act.
For years, Finland has ranked very high in Transparency International's analysis. So we clearly have already done some things right?
Yes, Finland does not need a transparency register to prevent any shady cabinet deals, but simply because lobbying will benefit from more openness and easier understanding. I am very proud that Finland will be the first Nordic country to enact an act on a transparency register.
Thank you, Tuomo, and thank you all. We hope that our experience will provide a good benchmark for other countries as well.